Okay, I am making another video today. Well, once I get my camera straightened out here, I decided to come on here because I wanted to read to you guys from this book, Castles and Crusades. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a role-playing system. Came out, I think, 2006. The books have been revised somewhat. I don't think there's different editions. I'm not sure about that. But when I read this book, I saw this in Scry magazine back in the day, and they were complimenting the system. So I went and bought it just to check it out. And I was so inspired by it that this was the inspiration for me writing my own player's handbook, my own edition of D&D, to get everything into the system. And I used a lot of what's in here because it's that good, in my opinion. But I wanted to read something. I'm going to do what Bill from the Dungeon Delver does. He reads a lot from his thing. He has graphics, so I don't have any graphics, so you can read along. But you can look this up. I don't know if there's a PDF for it, or you can go buy the book if you want. But I wanted to read the intro and the tribute to Gary Gygax that they do here. Someone said he helped them with this. I don't know if that's the case, that he had been fired and was, so he helped them put this thing together. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't say anywhere in here, so other than this tribute. Here's what it says. We offer this book as an ode to the years of fun in game and play, and to the creative might and best of friendships bound within the very person of E. Gary Gygax, for whom none of what came before, nor any that must come after, would be possible. Thank you, Gary. And then they say, in the immortal days of our youth, we found high adventure and fought many a campaign against all manner of villainy and evil. We slew dragons, brought down corrupt tyrants, explored uncharted territories, and freed the world of grotesque creatures of mythical proportions. We were heroes on a crusade. These youthful adventures were brought to us by Gary Gygax through the medium of roleplay and the fantastic game that made it all possible. We bring you our own game now, one that we hope captures those early days of grand quests and exploration. The Castles and Crusades role-playing game pulls on those early experiences and makes them real again. First and foremost, we would like to thank E. Gary Gygax for sharing his wonderful vision with the rest of us, for without it, none would have followed. Our hats are off to you, good sir. And then, I hope I pronounced this guy's name right, Stephen Chenault, Chenaut, I think is how he spells his name. He wrote this little thing at the intro called Where Role-Playing and Role-Playing Meet. Role-playing being one word, R-O-L-L, playing, and role-playing being two words, R-O-L-E, playing. And this is what he says, and this is why I'm making this video. I run my games fairly consistently. All of my games combine intense interaction between the players and myself with quick-moving, heart-stopping combats. These many moments, actions, and interactions must be woven together over a night's play through exciting storytelling and player involvement. When the tale is woven tightly, emotions are awakened, creating unforgettable moods. This is where role-playing and role-playing meet, and the result is an electrifying evening of gaming. Capturing a mood is difficult. It is a challenge to create the intricate interplay between a bartender who is bought and paid for by a thieves guild and a character seeking to pry information from him. The task involves descriptive text, acting, accents, and a great number of things. The sounds of sword clashing upon shield, of flesh and bone, grinding against metal. All this against a background of a field awash in blood and combat are all demanding to capture in narrative. How does one help players imagine the sound of a bow creaking as the arrow is drawn back? How does one make them fear that sound? The tale in the game must cascade over the players, engulfing them in a wash of emotions: fear, rage, courage, elation. Once you've captured everyone's emotions, the game is won. At that point, The game is pure fun, like a good movie, one where you forget you're in a theater. The core of any game's philosophy has to have the goal of creating and capturing a mood charged with excitement. Anything that detracts from that objective detracts from the game. How does one capture that mood? Foremost, the rules guiding gameplay must be easily understood. Ideally, the basic rules of the game should be easily grasped within about 15 minutes. A player should be able to sit down with another player, create a character, and have the basics of the game explained to them in just that time. As a foundation, the rules must be kept simple and logical, easy to comprehend, and easy to enact. Expanding the game comes later, much like adding stories to a building. Start with a firm, square foundation, and everything else follows. The game must be adaptable as well. Gamers are diverse people, all with different imaginations, different tastes, and different desires. They all want to play a game that suits their tastes. Those playing should be able to add, discard, and change rules and ideas to fit their needs without worrying about the effects those changes have on the workings of the rest of the game. There should only be a few hard and fast rules. Everything else is extra. The main impediment to these objectives is an overabundance of rules. A glut of rules unnecessarily restricts the flow of the story, and even worse, the flow of the game. Rules do serve a purpose. They codify actions and reactions during gameplay. However, rules can also impede the imagination. They can reduce the element of uncertainty and the emotions that come with it. They can describe too much and thus hinder the capacity for narrative development for all participants. At its worst, codifying too much into game rules reduces emotion and mood. This misses the goal of capturing the emotions of the participants, and then you've lost the heart of the game. An efficient and concise set of rules allows an ease of play and adaptability, and is a necessary ingredient. A rules-light, adaptable game naturally engenders a gaming environment where one is bound only by imagination. When so unleashed, one can act without restraint to create a gaming environment that is fun for all. That is the core of this game's philosophy. That was the core of the original game. At its heart, it was intended to be a fun game to play, and this game adheres to the same philosophy. Castles and Crusades is not a realistic simulation game. Castles and Crusades is a fantasy game where imagination rules. When I saw this mentioned in Scry magazine, it said how this was a bare bones rule system. So if you want something that's real basic, bare bones, they called it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds right, because the rules had become so complex at that time. And I'm pretty sure that those remarks were being made at Wizards of the Coast. I mean, he doesn't come out and say it, but I think so. But you could argue that AD&D was a set of complex rules. You could argue that AD&D was a rules-heavy system. I mean, the DMG at least was. The Player's Handbook wasn't. That was more. I think so. I think that would be the explanation. It's like, yeah, the Dungeon Master can have all the rules, but the Player's Book needs to be light. Where when 2nd edition came out, I believe the Player's Handbook was thicker than the Dungeon Master's Guide, because they wanted more rules that everybody would use for the game. And then 3rd edition, I believe, is where the overabundance of rules came from. I'm pretty sure about that. If someone wants to correct me if I'm wrong, feel free. But this is quite an interesting system. It's very much inspired, obviously, by AD&D, maybe 2nd edition. I'm not sure, and it's just something that I wanted to read. I wanted to share that, and hopefully you guys liked it. And feel free to comment and tell me what you think.